I would say it's an incredible honor, but it's an honor that I wish was not necessary. I wish it was not mine to share, because it's not mine alone. This belongs to a community of individuals and institutions around the world. Journalists, activists, publishers, technologists, everybody who's been seeing the trends building, everybody who has had concerns about the way our society is developing, and sought to resist them, sought to challenge them, and said that, yes, we all see the direction that the society is headed in, but this is not ours to have. This is not the way we have to go. And yet, increasingly, we see this is where we are. The challenge that we're facing today is that we have these award ceremonies. We have to recognize individuals who make sacrifices to protect basic rights, basic liberties, basic values that Western society has held dear for generations. And I have to say, I wish I was speaking with you tonight under very different circumstances. Because what we see is within the Netherlands, rather than take lessons from what we've seen over the last year, they're trying to make their laws worse. The MIVD, the AIVD are working together. They're using legal authorities that were championed, they were platformed, they were designed by the National Security Agency. And actually, I mean, this isn't just me saying this, these are things on record. Upstream is what the program is called in the United States under a particular authority, that they're now trying to apply to you. And people ask, why do these things matter? People go, do I really care? Do I have something to hide? Do I have something to defend? People ask me, how do we explain to people why they should care about this? Because these are questions of rights. These are things that even if they don't apply to you, they apply to all of us. If you give an inch, society loses a mile. Because rights are collective. And if you stop defending these things, everyone loses them and we will never get them back. And yet we all understand why we need these rights. People say, I don't know what it would be like to live in a society without any privacy. But the inverse is true, actually. We have felt this for ages and ages. Every single individual has lived through these experiences when we were children. Because what you think about in 1984, the thing that Winston was experiencing was the awareness, the prejudice, the prejudgment of knowing that all of his activities were being monitored and they were being analyzed for approval. Are these things that our observers would agree with, or are these things that our observers would wish to discourage? This is the same as our parents looking at us and saying, what should he eat for dinner? What kind of books is he reading? Who is he hanging out with? Is this with the right crowd? Is she developing in the way that I think is appropriate? The problem with the laws that are trying to be passed in the Netherlands today that provide bulk access to the communications of terrestrial cables, vice merely satellite communications, is satellite communications are used mostly by institutions, mostly by large organizations, mostly by governments. The social impact of this interception is much smaller when they provide themselves, rather than the terrestrial cables, where the majority of internet communications flow, through which the majority of our private records flow. Because what they are providing themselves is unaudited access to the private records of every individual, every citizen's life, in the greatest detail. Now, the government might defend this, saying, oh, we're only talking about metadata, but this is not true. Because first off, once you have access to these cables, you have access to both metadata and content. But let's take them at their assertion. Let's say that yes, we have metadata. All we care about is metadata. We're not looking at content. The reality is metadata is a proxy for content. If I, the analyst sitting at NSA in Hawaii, or a government office in Amsterdam, is looking at your communications, I see the IP address that this communication originated at, the destination that it went to, what the port numbers associated with the communications were, the file size, the length and duration of the transmission, where it went through, where it routed to. But this can be applied to a news site, and I can tell exactly what you're reading without seeing the content at all. Because if I know that this IP address is run by the biggest newspaper in the country, and there was an article published on that day of this file size, and that corresponds with what you were looking at, I know what you read without having the content of it at all. And this can be done programmatically, algorithmically, and it gets worse and worse. Ultimately, we have to decide what measure of rights we want to enjoy as a society. And we have to not simply believe in them. We have to not merely speak in favor of them, but we have to actively stand for them. And say that if governments seek to redraw the boundaries around our rights, and they do it in secret without the accountability of the public, that they will no longer remain our government. And if we lose control over the electoral process, if we lose control over the policies of our government, we will build better systems ourselves, as individuals, as communities, the kind of things that are all Bahama saying. So we won't have to live in a world where we've got a big brother sitting up here in the corner looking at everything. We have us. We have trusted communications. We have the same rights that we ourselves inherited and that we will pass on to those who come after us. And that through working together, through community leadership, through solidarity, we will say that I don't want to live in a world where everything I do is intercepted in advance. It is collected in aggregate, in bulk. And that when governments make mistakes, they won't be held to account as we see today. We will say that civil society, the public, has a seat at the table of government, and we will steer the direction of society heads towards the future. And we will say, these are our rights, and if you will not respect them, we will defend them.